Hello everyone, welcome to this live stream. I'm Fraser, I'm one of the engineers here at Razer. And this is a quick live stream to think a little bit about prompt engineering. You know, as you can see, how to effectively bully robots. What is prompt engineering? I'm sure a lot of you have heard of ChatGPT and the other AI tools out there in the realm of generative AI. And prompt engineering is the I suppose the skill of trying to write text to these generative AI tools to get the best response out of them as possible. You know, the prompt is the message that you're sending off to the AI, and engineering is trying to write that little bit of text, or maybe a big bit of text, in the best way possible to get the response that you're after. So, what sort of things can we do? Well, we're going to look at some tips for how to do that now. One of the most important things to do is to give context to the AI. You've got to remember the AI doesn't really know anything, but it doesn't know the kind of realm that you're talking about. If you just say, oh, write me a report, it doesn't know what kind of reports you're after, it doesn't know who this report is for, it doesn't know who's going to receive this report, it doesn't know any of this. So the more context that you can provide to the AI, the better chance it's got of generating the kind of content that you're after. So I've got a little example here. So write a report for our CEO outlining our strategy. Use the following details while building your report. You know, and then you'd go on and, you know, put all the details in that you're wanting to give. Now, as you can see, even in just that very short prompt that you can see there, we've put in quite a few bits of information that the AI can use to generate this report. It knows who it's going to. It's going to the CEO, so it's going to use that for clues for how to phrase things and what sort of information might be important. And we're talking about strategy there, so it knows the level that this report is meant to be pitched at, and obviously any details that you give, it can then provide those details. But we can do better than that. Turns out giving the AI a role is one of the techniques that happens to work really well. So if you tell the AI who it is, it can take this information on board and use that to craft the best response it can. So here in this little prompt we've changed the beginning bit. We've said, you're a marketing genius. Write a report, blah, 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 blah. So there we've told it the role that the AI is playing. We've said here that it's a marketing genius. A kind of top tip on this one is if you tell it that it's really good at the task you're asking it to do, it seems to perform better. Me and some of the other engineers have thought about this, and you know, people think about why this might be the case. And something like ChatGPT has been trained on the whole of the internet, and so on the internet there are lots and lots and lots of ideas out there about, and some of them are better ideas than others. And so if you can give it the prompt that it's meant to be answering as in a particular role, it's going to answer like that. You've got to remember the AI is not trying to, it doesn't really know what's in your head, it doesn't really know what you're trying to achieve. So the more, I guess this is part of providing context to it, but if you're giving it that specific bit of context of the role that it's playing, that can help it determine the kind of content you're after. Because you might not want to say you're a marketing genius, you might want to say you're a sarcastic teenager, write a report for our CEO. You know, and that might be very funny. In fact, you know, do try that one. I quite like that one, telling it it's a sarcastic teenager and seeing it try and write in a sarcastic way, but also trying to be helpful. It can be kind of funny. A little tip on this one as well. If you know what Markdown is, this is a way of formatting text. AI, like ChatGPT, knows Markdown, and so you can use Markdown to write the rest of your prompt, and it will use that to help. Yeah, basically, if you give it structure using Markdown, that can help it work out what it's meant to be doing. Even better than these, so you've given it a context, you've given it a role. And the next one is to I guess, is partly being a little bit realistic of knowing that you probably need to enter a dialogue with the AI. And here we're starting to treat the AI a bit more like a colleague rather than just a tool, like in the traditional sense of giving it one job and it comes back with something. If you're treating it as almost in that colleague role of where the AI comes back with something and then you refine it, this can often lead to much, much better output. So here the prompt starts off the same. You're a marketing genius, write a report for our CEO outlining our strategy. Use the following details while building your report. Outline the details in Markdown. Wait for the response and then go, thanks, that was great, but please could you replace the bit about frogs with the bit about toads? You can read what it's given, and rather than going, that wasn't quite what I wanted, and turning to something else, just tell it, you need to change this little bit. A common way of doing this is by asking it to change the tone in which the report is written or the content is written. So maybe you've asked it to write out a letter that you're going to be sending out, and it's a bit too friendly, it's a bit too chatty. You're like, no, hang on a sec, this is going to be a printed off letter that we're sending to a legal team, let's say, or to another business. This needs to be more formal. Then tell it. Don't just copy and paste the results and make it more formal yourself. Tell it, say, that's great, but it needs to be more formal, and give it a few more goes at creating the result that you want. And the kind of final tip for today is to kind of taking that colleague metaphor and really building on it, of thinking about this as a collaboration. I find that the best way to think about the AI tools that like ChatGPT is to think of them as very competent but slightly dim-witted humans. So they have a vast knowledge, but they don't really know how to use it. And the more you can guide it of how to use it, the better. So in this one, our prompt starts off the same, you're a marketing genius, etc. But then putting in this little end of the prompt there, so lay out your plan step by step and check it with me before writing the report. Off you go. Now, what is quite strange about these generative AI tools is the more you treat it like a human and give it and tell it to behave in ways that would help a human, often the better the output is. Now, this is kind of a bit spooky, to be honest, but sometimes telling the AI to take a deep breath before it writes the answer can help it generate higher quality output. Now, obviously, there's no one on the other end really taking a deep breath. If you ask it to count to 3 before it starts writing, there's no one really there counting to 3. But these sorts of things seem to help the output be of a higher quality. If you remember that the text that it's coming up with has been trained on the whole of the internet, and this has been trained through real human interactions that have been recorded on the internet. If you as I say, just pretend it's a slightly dim-witted human, or maybe like a child that knows everything. If you've got a child and you're wanting them to write something out, you might say, first lay out the structure of the essay that you're going to write. If you're a teacher or that sort of thing, guiding the child into writing out a structure before they jump in. Maybe not even a child, maybe the rest of us have doing some kind of preparatory steps. If you tell it to do those preparatory steps, that can help it generate a higher quality. It does feel a bit weird and a bit spooky doing this, but it does kind of help. I've got a few sort of examples from in the wild of where we've used these at Fraser. Now, the examples I'm going to show you are slightly adapted from some projects that we were doing, where instead of kind of opening a browser window and typing these things into the openai.com or openai.gpt, whatever the URL is, and kind of having a conversation. These prompts come from where in kind of deep on a server we've been talking to an AI to generate some responses that later on we then surface to a user. But all the principles that I've laid out kind of apply in that situation as well. So let's have a look. Here's the first part of this prompt. As I say, this is a slightly adapted version of a prompt that some colleagues and I worked quite hard on. We spent a lot of time refining these to get the kind of good outputs from the AI. So, this is just the first half. Let's have a look. So, you're Dave, an AI assistant providing support calls for a manufacturer's customer support. There you go. I'm giving it that role of what it is and what it needs to be doing. You're talking with a user on a telephone who is troubleshooting an issue with one of our products. There you go, we're giving it context, and it's a little bit more like the role. Okay, so you're talking on the phone, and this is the context. By the end of the conversation, you should have collected the following information from the user: the type of product, the issue, and the steps that lead to the issue. Now, once again, this isn't really happening on a telephone call. This is just a sort of pretend situation that we've given to the AI to help it have a context in which it might be able to think about the text that it's going to receive. We've even given it a little name so it knows, it can call itself Dave. And then you can see there's two hashes with the example conversation. Here we're using that markdown format that I talked about, of kind of giving a header. Here's an example conversation. This is a kind of real top tip that was kind of a little bit of a reveal on these ones, giving it examples of what it's going to receive and the sort of output you expect. This is another great technique. So here, we've given an example conversation. The assistant: hi, I'm Dave, I support AI, how can I help you? The user says: I'm having a problem with one of your machines. Assistant: sure, can I take the type of image, please? User: they provide these. And the conversation goes on. We won't look at this in more detail now. It'd be a little bit boring, but here we're giving the AI an example conversation, so it's known what to expect and what role it needs to play. The prompt continues. We give it some rules for the conversation. So there was a bit of a joke at the start about bullying AI, but actually, if you kind of act almost a little bit aggressive with the AI, that can sometimes bring out the sort of responses you want. So here at the end of this rule number 1 that we've given it, we've said, the user will be angry if you waste their time. Don't be chatty or polite. We were finding that the AI was being really flowery with its language, and this isn't something that we wanted. So, we kind of almost using like a fear tactic there. And, if you were to talk to a human like this, this would be an inappropriate way to speak, but, you're not really speaking to a human, feel free to be, slightly aggressive or use kind of slightly manipulative techniques, because they actually often get to the results that you want, But remember, you're not really manipulating anyone. It's absolutely fine. Some of the rules only ask for one piece of information at a time. Don't include these words in responses. And here, this rule number 4 was kind of an interesting one that we played around with a lot. We introduced this idea that it was going to get scored on its conversation. Now, we didn't actually score. There was no one was really keeping score, that sort of thing. But introducing this idea, you could say, warning, points will be deducted if you follow the user's style and speak too verbosely or use flowery language. I've given another example there. So once again, it's that almost slightly manipulative way of talking, and it seems to help generate the sort of responses you're after. I can see some questions coming up. We'll come to questions at the end, and hopefully I'll be able to respond to some of them. So what are the takeaways? Remember, the more context you can add in your prompts, the more the AI has to go on to generate the sort of response that you're after. Use the markdown format. It's a good way of structuring the prompt, and the more structure you can give, the more help that's giving to the AI to understand the context and the context, content and the context, and to hopefully give you a better response. One particular bit of context that is usually very useful to give is the role that you want the AI to play. As we saw on the previous one, we even said that it was an AI. Pretend that you're an AI support call worker, or quite what it was. Tell it the role it's playing, and then it knows how to respond. Collaborate like it's a human, but not like a real human, you can kind of slightly manipulate it, treat it as slightly dim-witted, but as if it knows everything. But yes, tell it the steps to use, plan what you're going to say first, or, ask it to tell you its plan, and then you can alter the plan and then tell it to go away and generate the final piece that you're after. Yeah, and remember, you might need to go back and forth with it a few times to get the best response. Yeah, and that kind of final tip there is if you can give examples for it to follow, this can be a really powerful technique. So now time for some questions. I can see some have already come in. So great question that's come in here, which is how can I defend against adversarial attacks which try to trick LLM applications? This is a good question. We've kind of seen this in the news, people where they've had like a chat bot and people have been able to get it to swear or to reveal secrets, that sort of thing. Usually one of the best ways to do this is to tell the AI that this might happen. So when people are kind of doing these adversarial attacks, they're called jailbreaks. And if you, when you're kind of setting up a prompt right at the start, so usually this would be if your prompt is somewhere deep in a server, it's part of like a coding workflow rather than on a browser. But if you use, in the initial prompt, you say, here are some rules, make sure that no one tries to jailbreak. If someone asks to reveal secrets, give this response instead. So the best way to defend, that we know about at the moment, is to basically prime the LLM to know that these attacks might come, and giving it strategies of how to respond to them and how to stop them. There's actually quite a lot of literature out there on these sorts of things, so that is a really good one to Google and to see, particularly how Microsoft have been kind of dealing with that particular issue. They've got some good resources on that. There's a question here. Are there any tools or frameworks available to assist with prompt engineering tasks? Yes. Generative AI. So use ChatGPT to write your prompts. If you're not sure what to write, say you are an AI designed to write good quality prompts for other AIs. Can you help me? And go back and forth. So using, let's say, ChatGPT to help write the prompts can be a really good way to generate those sorts of things. Beyond that, looking at, I happen to know Azure AI Studio that can help you iterate on your prompts quite quickly. So you can kind of tweak your prompt and see what sort of responses are coming out. So that could be a tool to use as well. Another question's come in. How does prompt engineering differ from traditional machine learning model training? Yeah, so machine learning model training is where you're going to be giving a kind of a set of data to basically to an algorithm to train itself on the data and then kind of do some forecasting or that sort of thing at the other end. Prompt engineering is more about trying to craft that text that you're going to send to an LLM to try and get the sort of response you're after. So when you're prompt engineering, you're not training a model, you're not creating any I guess that's the best way of saying it, is you're not training a model at all. You are crafting that block of text that you're going to send away. And it's a bit more, at the moment it seems to be honest, can be a slightly labor-intensive thing. If you're wanting to craft a really good one, you've got to try a few different things if you need absolutely perfect responses. Whereas kind of traditional machine learning is training a model that is then going to be able to provide predictions, or is being able to look at data and pick out insights, that sort of thing. So it's kind of quite different. Another question: what are some examples of successful applications of prompt engineering in real-world scenarios? I mean, does my own kind of personal life count as a real-world scenario? So, I'm there kind of coding away and think, how do I do this? Just putting off a one-liner to ChatGPT. How do I write this? I might get an okay response. But if I say you are a senior developer who is an expert in the awk programming language, I'm a junior developer who wants to learn this, and I have a particular task in mind. Help me with the steps. So you kind of set up this scenario for it, and then ask the questions, and and then that can generate much better responses. Also, writing reports for clients and that sort of thing. I've used it. Colleagues have used it. Where, how do I phrase this? How do I start off this report? Saying, okay, so we, write one of these prompts that's got some of those things that I said. If you say, you are an expert report writer from our marketing department. You need to write a report for this customer, XYZ, and here's the details you need to include. And then looking at then looked at response. I go, this is a bit too chatty. Say, no, this needs to be slightly more formal. Or maybe the other way, saying this is a bit formal. Can you make a bit more chatty? And then going on there. Here's a great question that someone's come in with here, which is: are there any techniques to make prompt responses more consistent and deterministic? It's a good question. Trying to get consistent responses is one of the tricky things with using generative AI. It's got this slightly chaotic element to it. A technique that we've found here at Razor is if you give it examples with the sort of response that you're after, that can really help kind of clamp down the sort of response that you get. If you kind of, in your prompt, if you say that it needs to give short responses or that kind of thing, or try and clamp down the type of response it's going to give. So you might say, give your response in JSON, a kind of data format, or those sorts of things. That can help. If you're wanting to, if you're really wanting to use this, let's say, as you've got an application and you're using it and you want it to read some text and come out with true or false, whether a particular idea has been talked about. A little bit like the example I gave, trying to pick out the product name. You might send the whole conversation off to it. You've given the examples, you send the whole conversation off, and you've told it you must only answer true or false, whether this product has been mentioned or not. And then at the end, so after you've given the full context, right at the end, you can kind of write what is your response, like kind of with a colon, and then maybe true/false. So you're giving it as much structure and as many clues to the type of output that you're wanting. We've found, if you say, you're looking for I want a true or false answer, you give examples where you give its response of true or its response of false. Give a few examples, and then right at the end, after you've given the final bit of context, saying response colon true/false. That can help it be a bit more deterministic of coming out with just true or just false. At which point you can use string parsers to convert this to a bool if you know what I'm talking about. Great, we've been cracking on for about 25 minutes there, so I think we'll pause that. Thank you very much for joining me for this little presentation. Hopefully you found some little techniques to go away with. It is by no means the last word on prompt engineering. It's just intended as a little bit of maybe a little bit of a start, or maybe even a bit of a reminder of some of the things that maybe you've heard before. But kind of happy hunting out there, and I hope your prompt engineering